The electrician opens the fuse box in Clark's basement. Half the switches are upside down. Wired to something. Connected to somewhere. The box won't even open properly. Clark doesn't know who put them there. But someone did before Clark ever found the backrooms. Welcome back to Movizo, where every ending hides a beginning. Today we're pulling apart how Async knew about Clark's portal before Clark did and what that changes about everything in this film. Here's the theory the film hides in plain sight. Async didn't discover Clark's portal by tracking him down. They set it up. Then watched to see who'd fall in. They wired that fuse box in Clark's basement before the story even begins. That's not a response to Clark. That's a trap pre-built for someone exactly like him. Now here's an outside angle clearly labeled as speculation. This isn't confirmed by the film or by Kane Parsons' canon. Some horror fans have drawn a comparison to the SCP Foundation's containment lore, where certain interdimensional entries are pre-identified as weak points in reality and quietly surrounded with monitoring equipment long before anything visibly wrong is noticed by civilians. If the film is using that framework deliberately, then Clark's basement wasn't randomly selected. Async already knew that specific address was a fragile seam between dimensions. Let's walk through the chain of proof the film actually gives us. First, the upside-down switches are impossible to explain without advance access. Clark didn't install them. His electrician can't even open the box to check. That kind of wiring takes planning and access to the basement over time. This isn't something you do in a hurry. Someone was inside that store before Clark knew anything. Second, the CCTV camera and advertising board inside the backrooms are Async's work. They're placed there to film whatever enters the space. You don't install surveillance inside a dimension you've never visited before. This means Async had already been inside Clark's version of the backrooms prior to the main story starting. Third, Phil recognizes Clark from watching that specific camera footage. He doesn't discover Clark by accident. He's already monitoring the feed. When Phil sees Clark's furniture store ad on TV, he simply cross-references an address he already knew about. That's verification, not discovery. Fourth, the trap gas in the backrooms was placed inside Clark's store replica specifically. Not in any random section of the space. In the exact zone shaped by Clark's own memories. That requires knowing not just that the portal existed, but knowing whose memories would build that specific room layout. Async was tracking Clark as a subject before he ever touched that wall. Fifth, the bird that falls into the backrooms at the opening is found on beaches in the real world. Async doesn't seem surprised when this detail comes up. They've mapped enough entry points to know other portals exist elsewhere. That suggests a much longer and wider operation than the film ever stops to announce. Sixth, consider the Greek mythology angle the film quietly references. Inside Clark's backrooms, there's a throne room. On the wall, there's imagery of a titan devouring his own child, a ruler destroying what might one day replace him. That throne didn't get there because of Clark. It was already there. Someone else's memories built that room before his. This is where Async's role stops being a side note and becomes the film's hidden spine. If Async built this trap around Clark on purpose, they've done it before with other people. Naren Vern, the researcher from the opening, wasn't the first attempt either. Each person who enters becomes both a subject and a lure, drawing the entity out on someone else's fear. That reframes the entire film's moral center. Clark is positioned as the cautionary tale, the man who refuses to take accountability. But Async deliberately chose someone emotionally volatile to be the container for their experiment. They needed someone with enough unresolved trauma to generate a powerful entity. And they found him before he even knew what the backrooms were. Mary's escape also lands differently through this lens. She doesn't just beat the entity. She beats the experiment she was never supposed to survive. Async expected her to fail, which is why they're so unprepared when she walks out. Here's where I land on this. Async wired that fuse box because they had already identified Clark's address as a liminal threshold, and they needed a human subject with enough trauma to produce a capturable entity. They selected him, monitored him, and only moved to close the trap once the entity had fully manifested, which required Clark to break down completely first. Mary wasn't part of their plan. The handprint concrete block, the childhood scar, the one tool they couldn't predict, that's what breaks their experiment from the inside. When Async recruits her at the end, they're not offering partnership. They're containing the only loose variable their operation failed to account for. So here's the question for you. If Async pre-built the trap around Clark's identity and trauma, do you think Naren Vern's death was also part of a similar controlled experiment, or did that one genuinely go wrong for them? That's the layer hiding underneath a fuse box nobody in this film can explain. A company that wasn't chasing the backrooms, they were building the conditions to catch what lives inside it. Welcome back to Movizo, where every ending hides a beginning. If this theory just changed how you see Async's role, hit like, drop your own read in the comments, and subscribe for the next breakdown.